All right. Welcome to our May 19th Lean Coffee discussion. What we'll be discussing today is any topic that you would like to discuss. It's pretty simple. Lean Coffee is a great way to have non-structured agenda on meetings. It's a great way for centers of excellence or groups of people to share ideas, um, bounce problems off of each other, discuss the latest and greatest in Agile, Scrum, Lean, whatever we would like to discuss today. So the way Lean Coffee works is we start off by gathering topic ideas. Once we have a group of topic ideas selected or written down, we will vote on which topics we would like to talk about first. Then we'll move them over here to the Kanban board you can see on my screen, and we'll discuss them. And first go around, we'll discuss each topic for 10 minutes. If the group would like to continue chatting about it, talking about it, like we're having a great conversation, we'll vote. If everybody would like to continue talking, we'll add 5 more minutes to the clock. If we would like to discontinue the conversation, we'll move on to the next topic. If you would like to continue talking after the 5 minutes up, we'll vote again, and you'll get an additional 3 minutes to talk about that same topic. If you've never done a lean coffee before, on my screen here, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner is what looks like a book. If you open it up, a panel will open from the side, which will give you any information or more information about lean coffee if you wanted to read a little bit more. All right. So let's get started. What I'm going to ask everybody to do, then I'm going to zoom out a little bit, is grab an empty Post-it note that you see here on the board, add your topic in a sentence or two that you'd like to talk about, and please add your name or initials or something so that we can identify who it is, and add it to the box where it says gather topic ideas. So I'm going to give us a couple minutes here to write down any topic ideas that you might have on a Post-it note. I'll redrop that share link one more time for Miro into the group chat so that you have it. There you go. If you don't feel comfortable with the Miro board and you don't know how to use it, or you can always just drop a question or a topic into the chat of the webinar, and I will cut and paste it into the Post-it notes for you. So yeah, I'm going to give you a few minutes here to discuss, or not think, discuss. Think about the topics that you'd like to cover today. You could come up with as many topics as you want. You don't have to do one per person. You can do 3, 4, 5, 6, however many you can think of. Okay, so far I see one person adding one topic, two people adding topics. Remember, you can always just drop them into the chat, and I'll be happy to insert them into Post-it note myself. So excellent. We have our first topic. Excellent. And the second topic? All right, I'm going to put about a minute and a half on the clock here, and then we will vote on topics that we would like to discuss. All right, about 60 seconds, 50 seconds left for everybody to come up with a topic or add it to the chat inside the webinar, and I will add it for you. Excellent. All right, so the next process here is to have each person that came up with the topic to kind of briefly describe what they're looking for, what their problem is, what their question is, what they'd like to discuss. So I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to go left to right. I'll line them up. Again, if you think of any additional topics as we go along, feel free to add them here. But we'll start with Tim. Your sticky note here says ways to encourage team members to engage in measurable continuous improvement. Would you like to give any additional commentary on this one? No? All right. It looks like Allison put on best practices to shift mindset from doing Agile to being Agile. Allison, would you like to tell us a little bit about your situation here?
Hi, thanks. So,
Yes.
you know how people say, oh, we moved to Agile. And yet there's some leaders that still cannot give up control, right? Letting the team get to their own, choosing their own work and self-managing, right? I guess that's how best to deal in that situation.
Okay, so your problem here has to deal with how to get the team to be agile or the management or both.
Oh, let's start with management. Team can
All
rock and roll on their own.
right. Okay, I'm just
Thank
going to
you.
put a little note on here to shift management mind, and that way everybody knows what we're talking about. Manage. I
Yes.
can spell it, which I cannot. There you go. Excellent topic. All right, the next topic is best remote virtual team social event experience. Ooh, that's a good one. Let's see. Tim also had this one. Tim, do you want to explain?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't realize I needed to unmute myself um, before. So you'd act like, seems like we've never done remote meetings before, right? Um, yeah, so basically just, I've done a lot of, and my team has done, try to give people, and since we've been working remote, now, give them opportunities to interact socially, just to, because you don't have the water cooler and the, chit chat before and after work and at lunch experiences anymore. So I'm just curious what's helped with other teams and other people's experience. What's been the best type of, kind of remote team social event experience that you've been able to have, and what made it work well? and then I guess on that first one, sorry, I missed on that one. On engaging in measurable continuous improvement. So like, just my one team that I have, they kind of struggle. They'll do a retrospective, and they'll come up with some things, but it's not anything. They have a hard time like crossing the line over to the part where it's like, oh wait, we need to do work that's not just about delivering, say stories. We need to do some work on our own stuff, like our own tooling, or we need to put something in place that measures our bug rate and helps us figure out why do we have this many bugs, how do we get less, just challenging them, encouraging them to take that extra step, right, to get into measurable continuous improvement. So those are my two. Sorry, talked about both.
Oh, that's great. Those are both great ones. All right. While we're looking here, we've got 3 topics so far. Does anybody want to add a 4th or 5th topic? Remember, you can add them to the chat, and I will add them myself to the board. Okay. So rather than vote, since there's only 3 topics, I think we'll just take the first topic here and we'll just slide them over in this order. Like this. That would make that nice and easy. So this is, everybody should be able to have conversation here. The object here is for you guys to help solve each other's problems, and I am just a facilitator. However, there are a few people here, so I will participate a little bit also. But so let's have our first round here on the topic number 1. Ways to encourage team members to engage in measurable continuous improvement. Now the first round always gets 10 minutes. And we can start the conversation now. Does anybody have any thoughts on how to engage team members on continuous improvement?
Hey everybody, am I off mute?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey Tim, good question. Do you do anything with like a capacity allocation where you actually like reserve like 10% of your time for like production support and 10% for like DevOpsy type stuff?
Typically what we do is we do some like capacity reservation, but only recently did I kind of got the team and the product owner to agree that like they needed specifically say tech debt, right?
Yeah.
Capacity every sprint, right? It's like they need to be allowed to just work on tech debt stuff. Before then it was just like, well, we know we're going to need some capacity reservation, and then I think part of the issue with this one team is they have felt pressured in the past that like they just have to deliver user stories, and so if they don't do that, it's not seen as valuable. And I think part of that is that perception has to be changed, but other than that, it's just like the getting them to say, other than, oh well, we need to test better, it's like, yeah, that's not really helpful, right? So
So it sounds like the team would be up for that, but maybe it's just you need to work with the product owner and the leadership to reserve that capacity. Is that correct? Or
I think so. I think there's that piece, and then I think the team members themselves are somewhat skittish about taking ownership of things outside of just writing code, right? It's like, okay, well, it's not just your code, it's your tools you use too. You have to be somebody take ownership of, oh hey, we need to go over here and automate this thing so that it just happens in a repeatable, measurable way. and it's not up to somebody to go do it, manually. Those types of things where to try to encourage them to be like, hey, that's good stuff, and you can do that too, and you get credit for doing that. I think there is some management things like you just said. I think the kind of environment it is kind of like they have to have permission to, as their mentality.
I get paid to get code into production features, not What I've seen worked with the last team that I led was we did like a DevOps heat map that sort of listed out a lot of the fragilities, right, in places where things were manual and automated, and we would do like sessions down that to refine it, and we would color code it between, and you give like the most critical things like a red, like this is a manual process that takes this many hours, every week or every month. And if someone's manually doing this file and they forget to put a colon at the end of this, then this process fails and our customers are mad. That would get like a red, right? And then there would be one. It would sort of bring visibility to some of those risks, and it would give like a handle to like grab onto them rather than just being like, we should do better with this stuff. Do you do anything like that? Do you have like a heat map or a list of things, or do you know like where your pain points are? Does the team know?
Not a lot. They get pretty insulated because some of that stuff gets thrown onto somebody else, and so they kind of get to wash their hands of it to a degree. And so they don't feel, they don't feel the pain, so then they don't care as much. So I've tried to, the last few sprints, I've tried to expose them to more of that. So like if there is an issue that, say there's a production quality issue or something else that they end up having to, own it and have to clean it up and fix the issue, as well as like deal with the, user complaining or whatever the impact is, it's like, oh, look, you got all these records now that, you're going to have to clean up what happened, or, so I'm trying to give them, I'll say opportunity to have it be more real to them, so that they're like, oh, so yeah, definitely that exposure. They're kind of, should I say, it's a small enough organization where they can be nimble, but they still have some bureaucratic mindset, it's like, oh, that's somebody else's problem. I don't have to care, when really they do, but they get, like I said, they get a little insulated. So I'm trying to peel some of that insulation back, so they have to feel the heat.
Good. I'll pause here so I don't monopolize the conversation. If anyone else wants to speak up, I've got some other ideas.
I wanted to just mention real quick, and then I'd love to hear your more ideas. I just recently, a while back, took a class from Jeff Sutherland, and he talked about these continuous improvement ideas that you should do. He calls scrumming the scrum, where you take these continuous improvement ideas, you actually make them into a story, you task them, you come up with a goal, all of that kind of thing. So you treat it exactly like a story. At the end of the sprint, you demo it to your product owner to show them the value. Right, during the stand-up, you have tasks that everybody needs to be held accountable for during the sprint, so that they actually have to speak to it. They have to say, yes, today I did this to further the, this continuous improvement effort. So it holds the team accountable, or they should be holding themselves accountable, right? And you do that, you point it and everything, just like anything else. And I've been using it the last couple sprints on a team I'm working with, and I've seen massive results because I got my product owner to buy into it. So at the end of the sprint, the product owner signs off on it just like anything else to validate that they actually accomplished what they were supposed to. And if they didn't, of course, or it didn't have the results they expected, they can go back to their retrospective, refine the idea and continue working on it. But I find it to be a very successful way of keeping the team engaged. But I'm lucky that I have an engaged product owner that's willing to do that, I guess, to help the team out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I like that. That's they've done experiments before, is what they've called, we've called them, where it's like, okay, we identified this, this issue or this opportunity for improvement, and so we're going to do an experiment this sprint. But I like the idea of it's just part of the whole, sprint backlog. In that way, it's a little less, it doesn't feel like it's outside of what they're supposed to be delivering. It's a part of the whole value of the sprint. Appreciate those ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you said value in there too, and I think that might be part of the solution would be the team might just be, looking at I deliver stories, maybe not thinking about the value. They might be disconnected from some of the pain or some of the issues that it causes the customers. So maybe like focusing attention on value rather than units of work might help, like engagement, in that area.
Cool.
Did anybody else have any thoughts on how to engage your team? On top of this, I guess I want to throw out also, how do you, and I struggle with this one too, because I am a Scrum Master, a coach, Scrum Master coach. Sometimes I struggle with how do you use the word measurable here? So on some of these things, it's very difficult to measure progress. How do you guys handle that, coming up with the measurements? Am I not the only one that struggles with that one?
I think it feels like a lot of work. It's so valuable, but it feels like a lot of work, right? Because it's like you have to figure out what are we going to measure and how are we going to measure it.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
And I sit on an instructional design team, so we're really different.
How so?
Because we can't be measured in particular units of work when we're putting things together. How do I say this? We don't break things down so much into each individual piece, right? Like I was editing this person's voiceover work for this video. It's more of a package.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so our timer went up here. We have, that was our first 10 minutes to talk about this topic. If we'd like to continue to talk about this topic, drop a yes in the chat inside the GoToWebinar. If we want to move on and talk about the next topic, then just drop a note in there, and then the majority will win. So I'm going to give you a second to say yes or no. Anybody have any thoughts?
I'm glad to stay here if there's still value to Tim. Glad to move on too.
I can do either.
All right. So does anybody, I'm curious, since we were just started talking about this measurable thing, does anybody have any other thoughts on how you'd measure continuous improvement?
When I think about measure, I kind of come down to, I start with like what things could you count, right? Get it to like a simple equation, and if there's like fiddly things where you need to log on and manually manipulate a file, you can you could like quantify how much time per week or month is done with that, and then if you can automate that process or make it more, less hands-on, you could quantify the time savings, or you could quantify the error rate has gone down, right?
Okay.
Which ultimately would give you more capacity to do other things or to make more improvements and maybe get the ball moving in that way. There could be stability measurements. There could be like alerting and monitoring that I always think about is a good thing for continuous improvement, right? So you can avoid issues, which you could probably find some history about how many issues are historically occurring and think if we got ahead of this, an hour earlier before it crashed, we'd save this, right? Things you can count.
Okay.
Yeah, I will relate something that we did recently with this team was, so they had an issue where they had, a couple, 2, 3 times in a row where, part of the product they delivered, they kept having an issue. So say it's like a processing, something on a repeated time frame, like a payroll, let's say, or or whatever it was, or a shipment or something. And so they had several in a row where it was like, oh, they had to manually intervene because something didn't go well. And the users had to be like, hey, we're having problems. So then we did like a incident, review type of, process where it was like gave them a framework that they had to walk through. So I used like a 8D troubleshooting thing. So I think if one of the ways is at least put some kind of framework around the conversation, right? So it guides them, through it, and then they actually then came up with, concrete things. But part of it was, having to give them a lot of structure around the conversation before, so that they then would go through and figure out, oh, okay, yeah, well, let's do this. So it's kind of like, giving them, and I'm sure it varies by team. I think with this team, they individually, like I've called them before, they're like a band that's made up of a bunch of solo artists. So they just, so they lack confidence, but like as long as if I can go over here to my desk and do it all by myself and nobody looking, I feel okay. But if we're sitting in a room or something, then I don't feel confident, kind of, personality. And so, so I had to give it a lot of structure beforehand so that they could just kind of follow the roadmap and be like, okay, yeah, okay, well, let's do these 4 things, right? And let's do this one for sure first, and the rest of these can wait. And, but that was, so it's a lot of legwork, right? But I guess, when you're the Scrum Master or coach or whatever your title is, I guess that's the job, right? So I was just trying to figure out ways to like, come up with these, not squishy, unquantifiable ways to engage them to, take on these types of things. But it seems like there's a lot of, giving them the structure so that they feel that's like, okay, I know where the walls are in this room, so I understand, where I can go and where I can't go. If it's too open-ended, they flail.
Is this group of developers used to working then on waterfall projects where the project manager kind of doles out tasks to them, and so the idea of being self-managed sounds like it's a little challenging?
It varies because there's a lot of them. They're used to being like a one-man show, I think, in their past, and so it's often like they can go do by themselves and do something and bring it and like, well, here's my thing that I delivered. And so they have a hard time, holding each other accountable because nobody wants to be the bad guy. Nobody wants to say, hey, Joe or hey, Susie, in your code review, you really shouldn't have done that. You need to do it like this.
Mm.
They have a hard time calling each other out on things like that. They just kind of like, oh, okay, good job. And so they have a hard time, with that side of it. And, so they kind of like it. They'll go ahead and let it be delivered. And it's like, well, we can clean it up later. So it's, that kind of culture, I guess I would say.
Uh-huh. Anybody have any thoughts on how to help with Tim with that problem?
Well, I lead change management workshops, and this came up last week for people not feeling psychologically safe, maybe, right? And that kind of has to be put in place. So one thing that I say, because there's all kinds of levels of leaders and team leads, and there was actually even an HR person in this one last week. So I think some people were more shy of speaking than others. But just I opened up, I always started out with a menu of norms. These are the group norms that are going to happen during our 2 days together. Here's what's on the menu. If you don't see something that you like there, now's your time to speak up, and please feel free to add it because, I like to follow the Vegas rule. What's said here stays here. Anything that does go up the chain from me, because of course the person that puts them in this class wants to know how everybody did, is anonymous, and I let them know that. And even the survey has this code anonymous in there. They can see it right away when they click on it. But just to make sure that they feel psychologically like their colleagues. I get that they're rock stars on their own, and though, it's like when one person lights a candle and then they touch the next person and then the whole room starts to brighten up. That's what could happen here with everybody's great ideas, right? Or just the little fixes that they could make into that person's piece of code. So sounds like psychological safety a little bit to me. I don't know. Might I have that right?
Are there any tricks on building psychological safety? Like, do you have like a one go-to thing that you find works? I don't want you to give away your trade secret. Yeah.
Well, no, and it's not even that it's a trade secret. So for the gentleman that I facilitate this with, right, we happened to be talking as people were coming back for break and went off of our mute before that they could even see us on camera. And we're talking about, well, maybe we want to structure this because it seems like they're getting this point, but they need more time on this in a workshop. And one of the ELT members goes, you guys know you're not on mute, right? And I said, yeah, but we can be fully transparent here because we feel like we're getting a grasp of the audience and we know what you'd like. And then he gave the little applause sign, right, in the Zoom meeting. So I get that. I heard the word culture, and I understand that at some point it's hard for people to feel safe, or especially for those that are more introverted, right? I like the fact that you add that people can chat in here rather than come off mute or, say things because sometimes.
People don't feel comfortable. Yeah.
Right.
One thing that I do like to do with my teams, I don't know if this would help you, and I don't know if we're getting off topic here, but when it comes to these kinds of things is I like to do kind of a personality inventory, and it's not anything fancy. You're not taking the Myers-Briggs test or the Gallup Strength Finders, but you basically send out a little survey, and maybe you even have your team come up with the survey. It's like, how do you like to deal with things? Like, so if we're brainstorming, are you one of those people that likes to throw out ideas, or you like one of those things that likes to process ideas and come back later and discuss, right? How do you like to deal with conflict? Or even things like, how do you like to communicate? Do you prefer face-to-face? Do you prefer email? Do you prefer chat? So you kind of get to know who's going to react in a certain way. Goes a long way sometimes building that safety, right? Because I know that, Bob's not going to say anything because he said he needs to go think about it first for a while before he comes back. So that might help I don't know, build some safety. This measurable part, I struggle with this too, and when I saw the word measurable here, I was all excited. It looks like everybody's kind of struggling with how do you measure sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I think the key thing is I know for me, I get hung up sometimes on when you talk about measurable because it feels like, oh, it has to be the the one size fits all, it's going to work in every situation. But it's like, I think we have to acknowledge, just like if we're agile, right, we're always adapting and we're like, okay, well, we worked on this last sprint, but because now reality's changed, we're going to change directions, or we're going to work on this other piece now, or maybe the product owner decided that, oh, wow, well, you did that now and that changes the game. So now let's do this. Versus I think that what you measure and how you measure it, you have to, adapt that as well, right? You got to measure what matters right now, right? Because like, depending on the environment, right? The important thing, this quarter might be, well, how many trucks are leaving the dock, and with product, going out to the world versus, the next quarter, there might be an internal issue going on. And that's like, well, we keep having, this machinery breakdown, or we keep having this, website problem, or whatever it is, right? So I think when we say measurable, at least that's a hang up I feel like I get caught in is, it's like, oh, well, it has to be this ultimate, measuring stick that always measures everything. And it's like, well, no, you're dealing with a particular problem, right? So measure that.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate the comments about emotional safety, because I think that is a big key. I kind of got the team to acknowledge recently that they were all like, it's like, they're kind of, the whole organizational culture is kind of like, we don't want negativity. We don't want too much praise either. We just kind of want to fly under the radar, right? And that's just
Mm-hmm.
like their organizational culture, right? So yeah, introverted, and just kind of want to, I don't really want a lot of attention for doing great. I want to, I want some praise, but not a lot. But I definitely don't want any negative attention. And so, I just kind of want to sail, right? And so, realizing, what, how they are, and then finding ways for them to, be able to still, celebrate their wins and get their kudos that they deserve, as well as recognize their opportunities where they need to improve. Definitely have to know the kind of people, and the kind of culture.
Yeah, and sometimes if you say you're going to measure something, that can have a negative impact too, because people think the measurements are going to be used against them, right? Well, they don't mind experimenting, but if we fail, then someone's going to see the measurement and we're going to look bad, right? So getting people to sometimes come with measurements because they don't feel safe around those can be tricky. And I do know a lot of organizations that say we won't use those measurements against you, and the next thing you know, they're saying you failed your experiments the last 3 sprints in a row, you're a bad team, right? And then people are like, well, we're not going to measure anymore, right? I don't know if you have that problem, but I know I've worked with companies that specifically have that issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the wording is important, how people are going to take the connotation. So that's a good point. Appreciate that.
All right, we've gone way over on this topic. So let's jump on, if everybody doesn't mind, let's talk about the next topic here. Although we have lots of time and only 3 topics. So the next one here was Allison's topic, which is a good one. Best practices to shift management's mindset from doing Agile to being Agile, which is actually a great segue from the one before. And I know, Allison, you gave a little Reader's Digest version before. Do you want to say something? Kick us off on this one?
Sure, happy to, thank you. So I heard a lot in the change management workshop that I was leading last week that these people have issues with managers that kind of don't walk the talk, right? They want their teams to be being agile rather than doing, yet they're still kind of micromanaging things. So how to get to that management, I guess, to recognize that, yes, they're totally capable and they can self-manage and have good outcomes.
Agile for thee, but not for me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Any thoughts on how to deal with that?
My experience has been that those managers, right, they don't know what they're supposed to do, right? If the team's being agile or the organization's being agile, right? Because if they were, waterfall or before, that was their job, right? It's kind of ride, ramrod on the team, right? Make sure, deadlines were met and Gantt charts were posted and stuff like that. Whereas if the team is self-directing and they're taking their input from their product owner and their stakeholders and they're delivering, what's that manager supposed to do, right? So it's like that person has to, now there's a little bit of, what value do I bring, as well as, teach an old dog new tricks, and it just depends on the person, obviously, but there's a lot of that of like, well, what am I supposed to do now? And it's kind of like, they gotta, their role has to change, and depending on the organization, it's like, is the organization really, it's hard, right? If the organization from top down isn't wanting to transform, it makes it tough for the, sometimes a team that's trying to be agile. It's like, well, we're being agile over here in this little pocket, and the rest of the organization is still doing what they do the old way. But it seems like, the person's like, they don't realize, well, your job now is to go empower these people and get roadblocks out of their way and listen to, to hear what's happening, and, as opposed to more directing. That's been my experience.
And I just like that you heard the word listen, because that kept coming up over and over and over again. I think the teams don't feel listened to at that level to realize, yeah, we've got this, right? And maybe they feel like roadblocks aren't being eliminated. So I appreciate that shift in perspective. I can absolutely see where managers would need to move from riding the herd to going, okay, what can I do to help here? What roadblocks can I eliminate?
There's a good article on the SAFE website about the role of the manager, right, in scaled agile, and just like Tim was saying, I think it was Tim, that idea that your job now is to grow people and to attend to these things, and that can be like a great place to start. I mean, I went through that journey myself when I became a manager, / leader of an organization, and it's like, what do I do? and I kind of leaned into that and actually posted like the SAFE principles in my cube and the House of Lean. But how do you push the rope to people maybe who aren't, that's your question. It's not like, what do you do? How do you get people to take that up, right? And that's hard sometimes, because I think you get rewarded for making things happen. That's how you had to kind of climb the ladder in a lot of our legacy organizations, right? I can make things happen. I can, get 110% out of this organization for a short period of time, or I can save the day. And all those things aren't really, amenable to like laying back, right? And letting the team do things and thinking in terms of value instead of Gantt charts and stories delivered versus stories committed, right? And things like that. It's hard to make that shift.
True. Thank you.
Yeah, but doing something with teams, I like to focus on, like get back to like the Scrum values, right? And the pillars and things you can do, I think, on that level, which isn't what you're asking about. Maybe there's a way we can kind of get there, but to like actually do a retro on like, how are we doing on those Scrum values with like courage and focus, commitment, respect, openness, right? And rather than just having it be like something that people just know because they're like living in this agile culture, to actually like make it part of the conversation and make it part of like your day to day, like almost like your metrics, right? How are you doing on these things, which aren't like story points? They're not like these control levers that managers used to have. They're softer. They're these agile values and principles, and anything you can do to like focus that and interject that into the conversation helps people along that journey.
I like your perspective on that. Thank you. Yeah, I do believe that, not only does everything have to come top down, but there can be some push from the team itself, Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think part of what you try to do in a transformation is you kind of establish like these, this is in bounds, and these people can have this type of a conversation with you, and here's the language we use, right? And there's language that we don't, or we try to not use, right? And having like those boundaries and having that sense of like, hey, I'm a Scrum Master, but I can talk to this leader about this because this is our agreed upon language. Making sure that people have that language and those tools, and they kind of know where those sort of lines have been established. So you have a sense that it's okay for me to challenge it. And here's the way I talk about that. I talk about my capacity, and I talk about my allocation. Right, that can be a way that you can empower people, to sort of maybe start to level that power structure a little bit.
That makes sense.
It also takes a very strong Scrum Master to, when management, I don't want to say steps out of line, but they act their old way, right? They start dictating work or pulling people off projects or whatever it is they do, using metrics the way they shouldn't be. It takes a really strong manager to have a crucial conversation with that, a strong Scrum Master to have a crucial conversation with that manager and say, look, I know your heart's in the right place and you're trying to accomplish X, Y, and Z. But, and like you just said, this is how we do it in an Agile team. And this is, if you want us to do something or whatever, this is the way we should handle it, right? But it takes a very strong Scrum Master sometimes to stand up to management. And I'm not saying you go to them and bark at them, right, and say, you're a jerk because right? But you have to go to them and explain to them, this is how we prefer to do things on an Agile team, because they don't know, right?
Yeah.
That's very
Just the
helpful.
reason why I do lots of Agile or I shouldn't say I've done several large-scale Agile transformations, and I know a lot of organizations say start grassroots, right? Pick a team, go pilot, blah blah blah, and all of those are great ideas, but I actually prefer to start with middle management. If you're going to do pilot, start with the middle management of the pilot first, and then work your way to the team, right? Because if middle management can think for sure can sink a whole transformation, right? They can undo all of the being agile stuff in very quickly if they don't understand their new role.
Absolutely agree to that.
Yeah, it can be so tricky. Yeah.
I like
And of course,
somebody mentioned the resource earlier, like, on the SAFE website or that. And there have actually been from different groups a lot of webinars this year about like, hey, Agile adoptions or Agile transformations are stalling, and here's the, different reasons why, and, what did the Agile leaders need to do to try to fix it? And a lot of it is, like somebody was saying, it's the soft stuff, right? And so, but you can probably find some, like I know there's like I'm trying to think of the name of some of that. There's like the Agile mentors community from Mike Cohn. They've got webinars. There's the Agile Alliance. Obviously, there's Scrum Alliance. And probably WebAge. I know they've got webinars, and so there's a lot. What I'm getting at is there's a lot of resources out there that are talking about this problem, right? Because it's happening, in a lot of organizations. So there's, you can get a lot of, information from these different thought leaders on like, hey, what's the right way to get these people to have their aha moment of like, oh, wait, I'm not really helping, I'm hindering, or to nudge them or whatever needs to happen.
Yes, thank you for all those recommendations. I've taken them all. Yeah, there was one high-level leader that was in there with the team, and he thanked them graciously for speaking up, especially because we did a sponsor assessment and was like, oh man, didn't know that we were epically failing there and that. Thanks for letting me know because I can't do anything about it unless I know. So yeah, at least they were willing to be open and honest with each other in their small groups, their breakout rooms we put them in. Thank you.
Agile, and then we can move on if we want. Agile also got a bad rap for years and years. Scrum, that it was going to come in and we were going to be able to do a lot more with less people, right? So what ended up happening in the early days, and still happens, right, is middle management gets cut. And so there are these people that are gun shy of Agile that work in that management level because they're afraid they're going to lose their job. So they do whatever they can to make themselves look good. And so, if their manager above them or senior leadership acts in a certain way, like people become very fearful of losing their job, which we've all learned since that Agile isn't out to get middle management. That's not the case at all. But there were organizations that pulled the trigger too soon and said, we're getting rid of these whole layers because we don't need them anymore. We can do way more with less, right? So
Yeah.
there are a lot of good resources out there too. If you smell that coming, that people are digging their heels in because of something like that, you can find lots of great resources that say, that's not true. That's not how Agile
Okay,
should work.
thank you.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I just had something occur in my context actually just before this meeting. I was meeting with some people about one of the things I do is I facilitate a community of practice for engineering managers and Scrum Masters for a 6,000 person development organization, and we've got like 8 portfolios. It's a pretty big thing, and one of the solution trains, and just so it's just like a little sliver, but it's still like a huge amount of people. They just normalized it, and we'd gone so far down this path of story pointing and relative sizing, and everything was awesome. But there was some executive who didn't like that because they didn't have that handle to control and understand the way they wanted to do it. So they standardized story points, and for 1 point is 6 hours of work. And it came up in my community the other day, and it was almost like a revolt, right? And one of my instincts that I didn't say, and I'll say it here, I haven't said anywhere else so far, but it's like, I'd like to put that person in the riff pool, right? And that's because it is so disruptive. And people, it is high-powered people, people who have, the attention of the organization and have some power, can really be disruptive, and it's really important to bring them along. And I don't have answers or solutions to it, but I'm just expressing some of my own frustrations with that right now, and how important this is, right? To somehow get through to some of the people who are still like really hanging on to those tools that they've had earlier in their careers, right?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks.
I liked what you said that in your workshop that, kind of the leadership was like, oh, wow, we didn't realize. So, I mean, obviously good leaders want to know what's going on and they want their people to succeed. And so sometimes they just don't realize or they don't know, so being able to facilitate that information to them, where they're going to be able to go, oh, I'm part of the problem. Well, let me get out of the way, or let me change, so, but they don't know, right? And that's hard sometimes for the teams to be able to communicate upward, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So, but they need, they've got to know that, right? So finding that way to communicate up, the chain, that it's like, hey, your workers really want to do a great job, but they need this, or they need this to change, or so that's good. I was glad to hear that, hey, they were open to that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to the next topic then. Moving right along. Did anybody add any more topics? Let's look over here. Nope. Okay, that's good. All right, the next topic here is best remote virtual team social event experience.
Mhm.
Who would like to share? How are you getting remote teams to socialize? The water cooler style, right? That what you meant, Tim?
Yeah, just, whatever kind of interaction, to keep, the team engaged that's not necessarily about work, right? I'll just throw out some examples that we've done. So like, and we varied them, over the last year or so when the whole work from home started for us. And so it was, we started out with, we would do like maybe a once a week, kind of like say I called it the Thursday at 4, and then or something like that. And then right. And the other weird thing was obviously people's schedules changed because, when this all first started, when everybody had to be remote, sometimes people couldn't get to work as early in the morning as they used to because they had their kids at home and they didn't used to have that or whatever. So, finding a good time, but we did that. And then we started doing also some like morning coffee breaks a few days a week, where it was like, say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we just blocked thing, and it was optional. You could jump on, say when if you would have been in the office, you probably would have been going to get your coffee right in the break room or something, and you're bumping into people. So we just formalized it as a remote meeting that you could join if you wanted to and chat. And then we would do. I started doing something as well that I saw online, and it was called a uh, crush call. And so there was some company that had this crush meeting every week. Well, basically you went around and anybody that wanted to participate would crush somebody. It was basically you're celebrating the wins for the week, right? It could be anything, right? It could be, so-and-so worked on a really hard assignment and did a great job, or so-and-so really helped me this week. They were very encouraging to me, or so-and-so really, showed their commitment or, exemplified some value that the organization had or a Scrum value or something, whatever you wanted to celebrate and kind of, call out somebody. So I tried to, so we had some various ones. And then, and of course it's tough, right? Because people get, what do they call it? Zoom fatigue, or, you get tired of, everything you're doing is on a computer now or on a screen, right? And so just trying to keep it, where people are engaged and getting that social interaction to keep the morale up and keep the team relationships going. So that's kind of background. Just curious, and obviously people have shared. If you go online, there's tons of ideas of things to do. I'm just curious, like, what have people done that's that they've had good experience with?
Gosh.
Do you have anything that work well?
Well, sometimes we'll gamify Wednesday afternoons. It just depends. Like you said, some people can't be unavailable. We work with people across different time zones. But yeah, like Jeopardy games, there's always some people on the team that are very competitive. And those that aren't just kind of sit back and watch, but at least, we're all in the same room and laughing and joking and yeah, being
Yeah.
part of what's going on.
Well, and that's how it happens, even if you're in person, right? People participate to different degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One that we've been doing on our team that's kind of fun, we use these Miro boards a lot, and we'll say on next Thursday we're going to get together at our happy hour, and everybody gets optional, of course. Find a picture from yourself when you were a teenager that's embarrassing, right? And you put a picture up, and you don't necessarily have to put the name because sometimes people don't look the same at all. And then we kind of laugh and joke about the pictures, and people, try to guess who it is and that kind of thing. And that's been kind of fun to see how people, we're at another time. I work with as a startup company for the last year, and I've never actually met in person. any of the people that I work with. So I know nothing about them. I know nothing about even their nonverbals. I have no way of knowing, right, how they are. So it's been a great way to kind of get to know people. People let their guard down. You know who you can joke with and who you can't, right? Who can take the joke, and which has been actually for me. I like to tease absolutely everybody, so it's been great to learn. Oh, this person has a sense of humor. This person maybe not so much, right? But I think that's been a fun activity we've done.
Nice. Yeah, another thing that we did when talking about your guess who it is in the picture was everybody, one person leads this because they have to be the person gathering all the information, but people sent in a picture of a pair of shoes and everybody had to guess who they belong to.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a super fun thing.
Yeah. And you could do almost anything, right? Picture of your car or anything you wanted, right?
Yeah. So some people sent in pictures of their slippers. Some people had tennis shoes that they were fond of. People that you wouldn't expect to own a pair of cowboy boots may have. Yeah. Going out shoes.
Ooh, I like that one. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. People's personalities shine through in that one.
We play
Nice.
the two truths and a lie, or is it the way two lies and a truth, whichever way you want to play it. Have everybody send those in advance, and then you vote on who you think it is. That one can be
Nice.
done pretty easily online too. You just drop them all in like a PowerPoint spread, and you kind of flip through them. Again, I think we talked a little bit about that. I mentioned it before. One of the greatest things that I've done in a long time is that little assessment that I was telling you about. How do people like to deal with stuff? But one of the questions we had on there is, how soon could I expect you to respond to a notice? If I said, whether it's a text message or a IM or whatever tool you're using, I found it to be super valuable because some people said, I'll respond within 5 minutes. Other people said it could take me a day to respond. And to me, it was super helpful to this to learn about people, about how they're going to respond. So I didn't get super anxious because I kind of expect people to respond to me immediately. And when they didn't, I could go back and say, oh, Chad says he's a 24-hour delay kind of person. So I don't need to get wigged out about this for another, right? He's not mad at me. He's not ignoring me. It's just the way he is, right? So certainly helped with the social part for me because I get all, like I said, anxious that I must have made him mad with the question or he's ignoring, right, whatever thing it is.
Nice.
That's a good one. Another good question that I had asked of me once when I was on a team was, you can learn a lot about people and even, how their support network is around them, which has kind of been helpful this past year. If you got hauled in to the police station in the middle of the night, do you have two people close by that aren't related to you that you could call unequivocally and just say, hey, I need some help. Could you come down here? And they would.
Ah,
I know. It's really interesting. I was asked that one day and I answered right away to my manager. And then I got home that night and I called my peeps and I'm like, hey guys, would you do this for me if this happened? And they were both like, oh yeah, absolutely. So.
but it also tells you about, I like that because it tells you about the thing that I didn't occur to me when the pandemic started is there are a ton of, especially when it was super bad in the beginning, right? There were a lot of like single people at home with no support system at all. Right? They're
Right.
just basically sitting in their house all by themselves for 3 months at a time. And we made a conscious effort to reach out to those people. And of course, like I said, I work for a startup that had quite a bit of money, but we would make sure those people, we would send them a meal maybe every once in a while, or right, just to show that it went a long way because
Fantastic.
some people have, giant families at home, and that's a whole nother problem. You might want to send them something else. And then, right. And then there are the people that, don't have anybody or whatever.
My goddaughter out in California works for this company. They did a really cool icebreakers thing where they hired a company that we'll do either a wine tasting or a cocktail tasting with them. And, even the people that don't necessarily imbibe, but, they might prefer club soda or juice, whatever, they could all participate during it, watching the person that was leading that event, which I thought was kind of a fun thing.
Mhm. We did one of those, a wine tasting, and the company actually then it was kind of pricey, but so they sent everybody like a small bottle of each wine, and then they actually sent like cheeses that went with the wine. So they would, so then if you didn't like the wine, you could at least try the cheese. This is the Gouda that you'd have with the whatever, and this is why you like the Gouda, right? So you kind of hit both things, food and drink, kind of.
Nice.
You guys are fantastic.
But they're kind of expensive. So, depending on the organization you work with.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. One of my sadnesses is we have not done, my team of coaches is really poor this year. We haven't done a happy hour since August. And so I don't have much to say about recent experience or successes with that.
It's a new season, though. It's spring. You can just make it happen, right?
You could. Yep. Good. Yep. You're right. You are right.
Now that you can actually go outdoors and stuff.
Yeah.
Meet at a park. We've been joking on my company, like I say, we're all remote and never met each other, that most of us live in the same cities, but a lot of us don't, that we should all go meet at a park. And the joke has been now that we don't actually want to meet face to face because it might ruin the great relationships that we've developed online. Right? If I actually get to know you now, maybe not so much, but
Interesting.
all right. So that's that topic. We're kind of blowing our time frames all over the thing. Does anybody have any additional topics they'd like to discuss? We got time.
I can offer a walk-on, I guess.
Okay.
So I brought up this community of practice that I facilitate that's targeted to engineering managers and Scrum Masters. And it's open right now, so anyone can come, but we're really clear about like, this is who this community is for. And we go over our missions statement at the opening of every meeting, that this is, we're holding the space so people can these particular roles can support each other, right? So there's two things, I guess. So one is, I've been doing this since October, and it's pretty much just my show. No one is leading in, and I've put some scaffolding out there. I've introduced an idea of like community topics and put templates and encourage people like, hey, if you read a book and you're excited about something, here's a template, and if you want to share it with the community, do it. Or if you want to ask the community about your own problems, you can have this stage for any amount of time that you want. And I've tried to do that, but literally nobody has come forward. So there's one thing. And the other thing I'm having is that I'm actually getting crashed by a lot of like senior director types who are starting to really co-opt the thing. And I'm concerned about psychological safety. And I'm considering, how I should manage that, either with maybe making it a closed community to make sure that people are safe, so it's just them and they know that it's just them and there's no one there who's going to, judge them on what they're sharing. I'm also just considering perhaps like some ground rules up front, like when we go over the mission statement, just be really explicit, like this community is for these people, and if you're not part of this group of people, just sort of hang back, please. So that's sort of some things that I'm just thinking about this week.
Who did you say was invited to this group?
It's engineering managers and Scrum Masters. We call them team leaders. Okay. Yeah.
And how many people generally attend?
So we've got a core group of about 40. Yeah. 40 out of about 300 who are in that role across the entire organization. So our penetration is deep, but we've got a pretty passionate group who shows up, or we're a pretty dedicated group that shows up every week.
But you're now opening it up to outside the organization?
Pardon me?
You're trying to open it up to outside the organization?
No, it's definitely an internal COP. Yeah, for our context.
I have tried to create a coaching COP for a long time, and I have the same problem. A lot of people come, and then nobody has done the homework or wants to participate. I wanted to do it more like uh, on a soft skill coaching thing, because it's the thing that I struggle with, the interpersonal part, right? The almost the life coaching part that goes with being an agile coach, because there's a lot of that kind of coaching, and I struggle with the same thing. So does anybody have any advice on COPs on how to get people to participate?
Bribes.
Treats, more donuts.
Uh,
I mean, I guess, you know, sometimes it's hard with that one, yeah, because like I'm in kind of a small town kind of environment as far as I'm in, and most of the communities it ends up being, yeah, it's the same, you know, couple of people who usually are presenting and so forth, and other people just kind of come, want to hear what they have to say, or, you know, nobody wants to, you know, present something. Every now and then you'll get, you know, somebody come out of left field with something, but usually it's just, you know, the same couple of, you know, people. And so it's, I mean, I guess I don't know, since this is an internal, I mean, do you have a couple of, you know, colleagues who are like, you know, you could kind of, you know, nudge them into it or something of like, hey, just talk to them and probably be like, it can't always be me, right? You know, dude, or, you know, can you, you know, take it, or, you know, if you know something that they do feel strongly about, but they just kind of, you know, it's hard, right? Because it's like, you know, it's extra, right? It's something that people would have to, it's like you talked about doing your homework, right? And so it's like, oh, well, I work and then I want to go home or I want to go do my thing. And, so, you know, but yeah, if you can, because once you get somebody, they might be like, you know, depending on how it goes, they may be like, oh, I'm going to do that again, right? Or, of course, you could get the opposite. I'm never doing that again. But yeah, I don't know if, you know, try some of the, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like, you know, people like to respond to, you know, it's kind of like why they have door prizes at different events and stuff, right? It's like, you know, gives people that little extra incentive. But if there's something that, you know, it's kind of like, you know, if you can get somebody that, you know, they do feel passionate about something, they just need that extra nudge to want to, you know, step up and lead a conversation about it.
right, kind of
Yeah,
like
the
how.
other side is like, yeah, I don't know about that. That's tricky if you got higher ups that are kind of invading the.
Yeah.
I guess you almost need to just kind of like, you know, probably outside of it, you know, just kind of maybe personally say to them is like, hey, yeah, that's great that you guys are coming, but you're taking over. Do you need your own COP? Is that what's going on here?
No kidding. Yeah, that's a good one.
Didn't mean to talk over you there. If that was Allison.
Oh, it was no big deal. Thank you. I like the idea of being able to hand off the talking points, right? You could always be the one that opens it. And how would you open it up to them so that they could maybe speak to a topic of their interest? Say, guys, this is our COP. It's by us, for us. What I think we ought to do is, like we've got Post-it notes here, what are the topics you would like to talk about for the next 5 meetings?
Mm-hmm.
Stick them in a basket and we can randomly pick them out, and whoever, you know, feels really passionate about something and would like to share with the rest of us, then it's yours. And then we know for the next 5 meetings here, you know, here are going to be the topics. So that's an idea of one way to do that. I always say to people, I have a co-facilitator in my change management workshops. Nobody wants to hear from me all day. Seriously.
Yeah.
Come on. I'm sure that gets old, guys. so yeah, just being able to open it up gently that way. And some people that, you know, if they're working on their IDPs, some people are looking to find their voice, right, at the workplace, or maybe their manager has shared with them, it would be nice to hear your opinions a little more often. Maybe this could be the safe space for them to do that, right? There's a lot of different things that you could think about on how to use that.
Yeah, good. Good. No, those are great ideas. Just a little more context. I do have a steering group, so I have 3 members of the community who I meet with every month, and they're sort of on deck to keep the conversation going, right? And when
Okay.
there's a you know, when we're trying to, they're fantastic. They'll lean in and they'll help, you know, like I said, like start a conversation, or, you know, help kind of watch the chat and keep things on track, which is cool. But even my steering group, and they love being a part of this, but
Nice.
they're not they're not willing to like take over even like one session, right? And I do we've done a couple surveys a couple times, and actually have a backlog that's published to an MS Team sites of topics of interest
Oh,
um,
nice.
to the community, and we do a retro every 3 months, and we go back and look at our topic backlog and what we've done, and so yeah, great fantastic ideas. But it's still just like crickets. It's still just like the Paul show every week, which
And
I
so,
think it's just sort of expectations, and maybe with this group, right? It's like people are used to just showing up and receiving things rather than participating. So like the community-ness, I would really like to have the community rather than, you know, it's like I'm giving them the slow motion 1 hour at a time, safe for teams, right?
yes. What if they all had to bring something to the party?
Yeah,
Next
that's
time we're
good.
meeting, we're talking about this. I want to hear what you guys think is maybe a best practice or things that have worked for you on this, or blah, 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 blah.
That's good. And for my other issue, which just sort of arose yesterday, which is why it's in my mind with our party being crashed and sometimes, you know, co-opted. I mean, so I'm really tempted to make it a closed community, because I think there's a big problem with psychological safety, but it just goes so counter to that, you know, principle or that pillar of transparency, that I'm just like, I feel like I'm just I know I'll get out of this, but like right now I feel just sort of stuck between, you know, trying to provide safety through closing the door and being transparent.
Yes, I
Well,
hear
you
you.
could
And
alternate, right? You could have some closed and some not, right? It could be like,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of like, I mean, that's what they do with all kinds of meetings, right? It's like, well, this part of the session is closed to the public, or this, you know, this month is closed, or whatever. You could try alternating, because yeah, you want the people that it's for to benefit, and maybe you can, you know, get the party crashers to go have their own party.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I heard you say, the word crash. I was like, wow, they weren't invited, but they think this is so interesting. So that's cool, right?
I think there's something about you know, you're always in trouble when you ascribe motives to people, right? But I think there's something about they want to monitor the conversation, right? And I think there's some people who are there explicitly, just like, you know, it's their command and controlism being expressed in a different way.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. But that's what I'm thinking. Part of it is.
So as far as getting other people to, you know, kind of step up and lead, what would happen if you know, you got sick at the last minute and you couldn't be there?
Yeah. So interesting. I'm actually taking off the month of June to pursue a big life goal. And literally right before I came to this meeting, I was with my steering group, and I'm like, hey, I'm out for June. I'd like to give you guys the keys to the COP rather than having another enterprise coach run it, because you really we don't need that. It's a great opportunity. And we had some ideas, and it was more like, what if we line up a bunch of guest speakers and then we'll just launch it and close it?
Oh,
Yeah. So it's like, well, okay, we could try to do that. Yeah, we can always have the Jira guy come in. People love the Jira guy. But, well, you know. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Oh, sure. Hope we were helpful.
Yeah, it helps to talk it out for sure.
All right. Anybody else have any other topics they want to talk about? Got time. All right. Well, we can stick around and chat if you're. Otherwise, I guess. Well, you're always free to go. This wasn't like you were stuck here, but I guess we'll call it a wrap then, and we'll call it good. We are trying to do. So I understand that the COP challenge. We're trying to expand this particular one for Scrum Masters and really anybody that's interested. The last one was super interesting. We did because a whole bunch of people came and they wanted to talk about transformations and how to build psychological safety. So the last whole one was almost all had to do with psychological safety, which was interesting. I learned a ton. So please pass the word out. We'll probably do one in another month or so. Keep watching the WebAge website. But I appreciate everybody's participation today. I hope that everybody picked up a few good tips. I know I picked up more than a few good tips, so I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.